that someone suffers an injustice, or that someone suffers because a landslide fell and destroyed their home, or whatever it might be. We can only say it's objectively wrong if we believe in objective right and wrong. When I see the objection that the Bible is immoral, I think to myself of this question of morality in the first place. This is a fundamental apologetic issue, because all the questions center on the idea that the Bible is not just untrue, but it's actually bad. But where did this notion of badness come from in the first place? This idea that things are objectively bad. So you'll hear the objection that God can't exist because if he was all-powerful, he would be able to stop the suffering. If he was all good, he would want to stop the suffering. So if he was all-powerful, he could do it, and if he's all good, he would have done it, but he hasn't done it. So either he's not all-powerful, or he's not all good, or more likely than not, he's just not even there. That's a powerful objection. It sounds like, well, that's an impossible dilemma. Where do you go with that? Because suffering is a reality of life. I don't need to ask you if you've suffered. You know that. There's evidence for it. But here's the issue. The objection itself, okay, this is important to understand. The objection itself says that human suffering is objectively bad. What that means is it's bad irrespective of human opinion. See, if something depends on human opinion, then that means it's subjective. It's based on the subject. So I experience some level of discomfort, and that is a subjective experience of mine, that I feel suffering, that I feel pain, whether emotional or physical or whatever, is oftentimes subjective. It's based on my opinion of it. So if you say something that is not offensive and I take offense to it, it might be objectively true. You said this. In other words, you said it. My opinion doesn't matter. These are the words that came out of your mouth. How I took it is subjective, or my preferences are subjective. I like vanilla bean ice cream, and I think it's one of the best ice creams that's out there. It's objectively true that I like it. It's not objectively true that it's the best ice cream out there. That's my opinion. That's based on the subject. That's based on me. So let's apply this now to the issue of evil and suffering and injustice and all these kind of things. If we say this particular thing is happening, this particular suffering is happening to these particular people in this particular way, and that's wrong, and God has done nothing to fix it, now what we're saying is this particular suffering to these particular people is objectively wrong. It's wrong even if everyone thought it was right. And that's true. I mean, let's face it. In this country, it was not long ago that it was legal to own people as property. And the vast majority of the people thought it was okay. Thank God some didn't, but the vast majority did. So if you're going to go by human opinion as to what's right and what's wrong, not too long ago, after the so-called Enlightenment, we thought it was perfectly fine to own people. And human opinion can't be. That was wrong even when we all thought it was right. So there are certain things that are morally, objectively true, and they can't be based on human opinion. So here's the following question. If certain things are morally, objectively true, in other words, it's wrong or right to do this or to do that, no matter what anybody believes, then where does that right or wrong come from? It has to come from a source outside of human beings. Because our opinions have been awful for centuries. We're bad at this. And if you need any evidence, just look at your history. Look at your recent history. We're not good at this. As a species, we're not good at this. I mean, we're arguing about whether or not we should boycott a country because of its genocidal behavior towards a certain people because of their religious beliefs, and banning or boycotting the Olympics. This isn't the 21st century. So we're bad at this. So morality can't come from us. Thank God it doesn't come from us. My goodness, could you imagine if objective morality is based on us? We'd be horribly lost. We're already struggling as it is. So objective morality has to come from a source outside of human opinion. If that's the case, There's only two possibilities. Follow me on this. There's only two possibilities of where objective morality can come from. There's several possibilities, but the most important competing possibilities are this. Morality just exists as what Plato called the forms, one of the Platonic forms. It just exists out there. Goodness exists just like that stool, but it's non-physical. Compassion just exists. Certain concepts just exist. Those are called abstract objects or abstract concepts. They just exist, and we conform. We're trying to discover what those things are over and over again, and so we come to that conclusion the more evolved we become and all this, and we get better and better at conforming ourselves to what the good actually is. It's just out there. The other option, the other main option, because there's several other options, but the other main option is that God is the source of morality. And why that would be the case is not because God conforms what he believes to good. In other words, God doesn't believe something because it's good. And something isn't good just because God says it. But God says it because he is the good. He is the source of all goodness. Now, why do I say that? Here's why I say that. If morality just existed out there, there's goodness that's out there like Plato believed. Do you ever see it do anything? Has goodness ever been good? Has justice ever been just? Has compassion ever been compassionate? No one looks around and says, oh, look at compassion doing its thing over there. Man, yesterday I watched this wonderful display of mercy. Who did it? Well, mercy did it. They don't do anything. Concepts don't do anything. And then if they don't do anything, then they can't even conform to themselves. See what I'm saying? Is if it's a law to be just, if it's morally obligatory for us to be just and fair, and if justice exists, then justice can't be just, and therefore it violates itself. It can't do the very thing it is. In other words, things aren't just. Things aren't compassionate, but persons are. Persons are compassionate, which means that if there, follow me with this now, this is important. If there is an objective source of moral value and moral duty, it can't be in something. It has to be rooted in someone. Now, if it's rooted in someone, that someone has to be the objective source of reality. Because if he's not, if that being is not, then that being is subject to opinion as well. So God is the eternal, never beginning, never ending source of all of reality. Therefore, he is also the source of all morality. So when we say that it is objectively wrong that someone suffers an injustice, or that someone suffers because a landslide fell and destroyed their home, or whatever it might be, we can only say it's objectively wrong if we believe in objective right and wrong. And if objective right and wrong exist, they have to exist because they're rooted in the objective moral being, which is God. You need a being to be moral. Asteroids aren't moral. Chairs aren't moral. Persons are moral. So for objective morality to exist, it has to be rooted in an objective person. So when we look at all these injustices and all these claims of injustices at the hands of the Bible or Christianity or whatever, the first thing you have to recognize is the minute you pose the question about objective justice and injustice, you're already admitting, essentially, that there has to be a source for that, and it has to be God. So that's the first apologetic. The moral arguments against God actually end up proving he exists.